So, I've watched this weirdly titled Greek Giant, I mean Giant Little Ones, yeah. And after watching the movie, I wonder what the title refers to. There might be some innuendo there. Anyway, so yeah, it's a very strange one, indeed, because the main incident they refer to, I barely noticed somehow. I'm not sure if it was before or after that thing where he said he wants to remove some sort of window and just stare at the sky or something. I don't know. I don't know what it was about. Now, sure enough, I admit that, like many other people, it sort of subverts expectations. I thought, this was just going to be just another sort of movie where, possibly some sort of rom-com as well, but really wasn't. No, well, I guess, yeah, the most of the source of comic sort of relief, as possible, comes from indeed so-called mouse. Inevitably, also she also provides the protagonist with um, food thought, I guess one could say, possibly. But the thing is that the so-called transformation, like in the last quarter of the movie, was a bit abrupt. No, a review I read called it believable. Is it? Is it so? Is it? That's the point. Um, is it believable? I mean, personally, if that happened, um, I mean, I would personally steal a bike or say I didn't steal it, even after being paid restitution for previously damaged own bike. So I mean, there was this kind of chain of nonsense happening. So it's not like I guess you cannot just isolate it and say negative thing A happened and no matter what. If you do not follow this chain of events, but of course, so-called Ballas's character began it really ultimately with the rumors. Um, but with regards to the bike, I mean, that was a point where his father brought them together to discuss to stop all this to sort of stem the tide of hatred in a way. Then it only escalated from there. So I don't know. I guess if he gave him back his bike, he could have. So this is pretty much my doubt about this movie. Really, it seems like it. Many people seem to think it's well made. It's the drama is compelling and such, and it is in a way. I mean, it's certainly odd and different from many others of its kind. Certainly different from any typical coming of age, etc. But is it believable? I don't think. I mean, sure enough, all these chain of negative events can happen realistically, but how likely it is it for what happened at the end to happen? I mean, he wasn't. I mean, sure, making up with his father, becoming friends again. That's possible, I suppose. But I still thought it happened a bit abruptly, though. Because he went from fighting him over the most trivial of matters, um, and at one point I even wanted to talk to him so far so that he just threw away some dessert to suddenly just knocking on his door and smiles and all. It's a bit absurd because I mean people can become friends again and whatnot, but it usually is a more gradual process. It's not just sudden like that. Not just because some friend of his told him something which made him think again. I don't know. Usually thought there's something sudden, something intermediary before he does this this transition, it was abrupt in my opinion, but that wasn't the worst. The worst was the most unbelievable it is, not worse as in, something that I really didn't like per se, but people said it's a positive ending, and well, great if you want to consider it. That is how believable though truly is it that after being beaten to a pulp, he'd be willing to just give him back his bike. Yeah, no, at that point, I think the ship would have sailed, surely. Surely, I mean, it just doesn't, movies are supposed to have this thing where, if you introduce negative events, they usually have a cathartic point, where that negative event is, there's counteracting force, and just there was nothing of the sort, and being given back his bike. I mean, sure, it's his bike, but it's so abrupt as well. So he went from denying he even knew at all anything about his bike when they were both in the same house, talking, trying to intimate with their fathers as intermediaries. It is too abrupt, in my opinion, and yeah, I, that's really my most major complaints, and it's still the narrative still makes little sense. Uh, I mean, it's just uh, it's there is too much negativity and not a lot of repercussions per se. I think, and that's the main problem really. Um, yeah, I mean it's a Canadian production from Ontario border apparently, but yeah. What it did have though, that's I think the best feature about this is the music. The music was so awesome. So it was practically electronic, I think, and it could be described as electronic at least. Well, these days, I mean, all music is electronic. Most are electronic in the sense that it's probably made on a synthesizer. So anyway, yeah, the music was pretty good. I noticed the musician also did several other movies. Apparently invented some infinite guitar. I'm assuming he used it there. He uses it in his soundtracks. I guess that's how. Yeah. So in this sense, I suppose I'm assuming. No, I'm assuming that's not a synthesizer technically. It ends up sounding like what I suppose. This device that he, if it's attached or something. Anyway, yeah, the music was pretty cool for what it is, but somehow, I mean, I don't know. He, those scenes of violence, right? And, yeah, I don't usually associate uh, sort of, you know, either real electronica with violence. I mean, it would make more sense if there was corn or something, in those violent scenes, because in fact, even corn's music videos are filled with bullying and such, which this film had plenty of. But this is the thing, this is the main thing. There is a lot of bullying, a lot of bloodshed, and no repercussions. So that just makes no sense, and I'm not entirely sure how people feel satisfied. It normally doesn't lead to satisfaction, and just um, they must have thought that what he did at the end would have sort of plastered it over, plastered all the wounds, just covered it up, but it doesn't really. And sure, shaving his hair is symbolic, but it still doesn't fulfill the need for like effect and counter effect. Just thesis counter thesis. These things are sort of follow usually. Even if but I don't consider that as a counter thesis. That's a problem. It doesn't need to be violent, but some sort of repercussion. Like legal or such. but there was nothing really. So it's so disappointing in this specific